What's up, everybody? Welcome back to West by Pod, podcast about WVU sports, the Big 12 Conference, and a little football talk in spring. I'm Joel Bracken at WV Stats Guy on Twitter. I'm joined as always by Jordan Pinto at Game Day Shorts. Jordan, welcome back to the pod. I know we're talking football during March Madness, which is the greatest sporting event of the year, but how are you feeling about football after taking a few months to decompress and step away?
Yeah, I'm feeling refreshed. I think we were talking about a little bit before we hopped on, but I unplugged about as much as I ever have unplugged from football following last season. Just needed to kind of, take the clothes off I was wearing, light them on fire, take a shower, take a couple deep breaths, and just really, think about things. But I'm feeling refreshed now. I'm back in. Last week and a half since we really started talking about, hey, spring football's coming up. Should we do a pod? It's felt good to dive back in, so I'm ready to go. How about yourself?
That's good to hear. Yeah, no, I think refresh is a good word. Stepping away is good, and I think more than ever too with the portal era. And this is across all teams. Sometimes like the roster can be in flux like so much. Sometimes it's nice to just be like, hey, I'm not going to care too much about the news for a few weeks or months, and then we'll pick it up and see who we got. So this is kind of both of our attempt at getting back in this, talking a little bit spring ball, what has changed in terms of like coaches, players, and just sort of a state of the program for right now.
Absolutely, yeah, man. We let the dust settle. The chips have fallen, at least where they're going to have fallen by the time spring ball starts. So now it's time to get ourselves primed up and refamiliarize ourselves with the folks who are coming back, and familiarize ourselves with the new faces, and get ready to see how this thing's going to shake out over the next month and a half or so.
Yeah, exactly. Almost time to start sowing those seeds that this is our year and everything is going to go swimmingly. So the plan for this episode, depending on the length, it might be 2 episodes, it might be an offense and defensive one. But really just kind of, like I said, talking about the state of things, the coaches that are coming back, and the new ones that we have on staff. We're going to walk through sort of the offense and defensive depth charts, answering some like big questions for both of the units, and then, just sort of kind of a vibe check on how we're feeling about the different position groups. So with that being said, I think it makes sense to start with the offense. Some refreshing, some things are staying. I think the biggest thing that changed this offseason was Graham Harrell being out. So Graham Harrell just 1 season in Morgantown. Offense was, had its ups and its downs. 61st in beta rank for the season, 83rd in yards per play, 70th in points per play. Kind of in the middle. When you're a Power 5 team, you expect to be a little higher than the middle in some of those metrics. So Jordan, how do you think the less than 12 months that Graham Harrell spent in Morgantown will be remembered?
Yeah, I mean, it was really up and down from the first second, right? I mean, the news came out in January that we'd hired him, and everybody was gassed up because it had been a lackluster 2021. Stop me if you've heard this story before. But yeah, I mean, the offense is really good at times. It was really bad at times. Texas, Iowa State might as well have not even taken those guys out there. Really just in terms of the way the games shook out. I think, best case scenario, it's remembered as the end of the beginning. If this thing turns around in any way, shape, or form, it's going to be because I think the offensive identity switches from the pseudo air raid thing that we've been trying to do for the last 4 years and turns into to more of maybe, a power spread type of deal. So, if that happens, if we can get something rolling with one of the new quarterbacks, I think maybe we remember it fondly as kind of like, yeah, that was kind of the nail in the coffin with what was and kind of made us push toward what we are now. So.
Yeah, definitely like a little experimental year, I guess you would say, in terms of, we tried some things. Obviously, we had the Jared Deggy situation for a couple years, and then now you're like, we got his transfer quarterback, we have some weapons, and, the air raid had its moments. I think so many drives through the pit game, you're like, wow, we can move the ball, things are all right. And, as the season went along, I don't know if you ever felt confident you knew what you were getting with the offense. Obviously, some bright spots, but Graham Harrell is out at offensive coordinator. It's worth mentioning that Neil Brown obviously is still going to be the head coach. Who knows for how long with the new athletic director, Ren Baker. In terms of the offense, how involved is Neil Brown, going to be in with the play calling and with sort of like the scheme? That's going to be something to be seen. But yeah, so the new offensive coordinator is going to be Chad Scott. And he's been promoted up from the running backs coach. And I don't know. I mean, I think the running backs, since he's been here, this will be his 5th season. The running back room has probably been the most consistent and the most productive, position group on the offense. What do you think about that, Jordan?
I think that's definitely a fair statement. You just, you look at who we've had over the last handful of years. Letty Brown, obviously a great player for us for a number of years. Last year, I think, you can confidently say that they were the most consistent, probably game to game position group that we had, just in terms of, one guy went, it didn't matter who we threw out there. It felt like, to a certain extent, they all produced, they were all good in their own certain ways. I don't know. So like, what do I think it makes sense. But if you kind of step back, do you feel like, a lot of our offensive hires kind of have a whiff of we couldn't really get anybody else, just based on how the previous 4 years have went. Nothing against Chad Scott. Like you said, he's done a great job as the running backs coach. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe a whiff of that, and maybe a whiff. I wonder how much Neil Brown was involved in that decision as well. Keeping it in-house, keeping, a guy who has been below him, keeping him and, promoting him up to the coordinator position. But is this like Neil's chance to like take the reins back on the offense, one last time? I've heard varying things about who was really in control of the offense as the season progressed last season. So yeah, I think for Chad Scott, like, he's done a great job so far. Nothing to knock the guy. The big league back thing is, what he kind of has been promoting, and
it sells.
He's done his job great. So I like the guy. He's been with. So I believe he has been with Neil Brown in 2 different stints. So he was with him like Detroit, Texas Tech, Kentucky, and then he was at North Carolina and Louisville for a few years in between that Kentucky. And then, rejoins back at WVU. So I wonder if this is, Neil's guy. He promotes him up, but Neil wants to keep like a strong thumb on the scale here on the offense. That's maybe my read on it a little bit. But I don't know. The offense obviously has to do something different than we've done in the last couple of years, because it has not been a productive unit since like Will Grier was the quarterback. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I know you said the scheme thing. Maybe we go to more like a power spread. I think I would be in favor of that. I think Chad Scott, you think you promote your running backs coach to offensive coordinator, that tells me you're probably going to be a little more run heavy. So maybe that's a hint looking ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, we talked about the big questions going in. I think the biggest one has to be, what is this offense? Who's calling the plays? And I think you're probably spot on. The reason that Chad Scott gets promoted is because Neil can reassert a little bit of authority. From what I've heard, and obviously this is secondhand, but secondhand from people directly in the building is that Neil is 100% calling the plays this year. And if that's the case, you can't blame him, right? This is the do or die year. You're coaching for your job right now, and if I was going down with the ship, I'd want to be the one steering the wheel, basically. So, if that's the case, I can't blame him. And yeah, hopefully, I mean, we're obviously going to go through the pieces here on when we run through the depth chart, but the pieces certainly seem like they would favor a more run heavy group. I know we kind of said that maybe a little bit even in last year, but yeah, no, we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I do think the pieces sort of favor that, but we'll get into that in a minute. Just to round out sort of the coaching on the offensive side of the ball. So, Sean Reagan's going to be returning as the passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. This is his 5th year at WVU. So some continuity there. Actually, I didn't look. Is Chad Scott still going to remain? He will remain the running backs coach.
Running backs, yep.
So that'll be the same there. As far as the receivers coach, we have Bilal Marshall is going to be coming in. So he came in January, and blanking on what school he came
I think it
from.
was a VMI.
Yeah, VMI. So that'll be a new face for the offensive or for the wide receivers. Um, Other new face, which is definitely of note, is Blaine Stewart coming in as the assistant wide receiver coach from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's going to be coming in as the tight ends coach. Obviously, a big name in Morgantown, Bill Stewart's son. Did you know much about him up in Pittsburgh?
I mean, just because he was Bill's son, obviously, and being kind of as close or as plugged into the program as I've been for most of my life. Yeah, I knew he was in Pittsburgh. I don't know how big of a role he played. Obviously, what does an assistant wide receivers coach really do? But that's not a bad building to be in. Obviously, I'm a Steelers fan, but I have just a tremendous amount of respect for Mike Tomlin. So being able to be in meeting rooms with that guy for the last 2 years, I think it can't have been a bad experience. And so I don't know what he'll bring to the table as a tight ends coach, but if he picked up anything from Tomlin, I'm gonna give him every opportunity. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I am not a Steelers fan, but I do have a lot of respect for Tomlin. He seems like the kind of guy you would want to play for and the kind of guy that, as a coach, you would want some things to rub off from. So,
Yep.
That's going to be the new tight ends coach, Blaine Stewart. The only other positional group coach on the offense is Matt Moore on the offensive line once again. And I don't know. I can never get a pulse on how people feel about Matt Moore because when the line plays well, I feel like people like him. And then, especially through some of those building years, it was like Matt Moore's got to be, he's Neil Brown's buddy. He's, been protected too long. I don't know that I have a strong take on Matt Moore, but when things go bad, his name comes up early, I feel like.
Yeah, it's just because when the offensive line I think has been bad, it's been really bad. But in general, I mean, you have to look. The first 2-3 years they kept saying like, look, we need to get bodies in here. This is going to be a developmental kind of thing. And then last year, that we were certainly in the top half of the league in terms of offensive lines. I'd say we were probably one of the top 3 or 4. So, we trusted the process. I feel like the process bore out. And the good thing is that, we have a lot of those guys back this year. So now I think that generally he's done a pretty good job. I think that was one of the weakest position groups on the roster when they got to Morgantown. And now it's, arguably the strongest or one of the 2 strongest. So, I think that says everything about him.
I agree. And I do remember Neil saying something like that last year where that was, I would say, our weakest position group. Yeah, like his first year or 2 and really come to become like a strength. It's like, when you're in the gym and you have a deficiency and you train it a bunch and then one day that's like, what you're good at. So, interesting to see that turn around. Obviously, Matt Moore is one of the guys who's been with Neil for a long time. So, you look around this offensive coaching group and a lot of these guys are Neil's guys, speaking of Moore, Reagan and Chad Scott, we still have a heavy Neil Brown. There wasn't this like, we're cleaning everything and we're going to take one last shot at it. It's really like this thing we've been building, we're going to go with what we've been building for this year. That's definitely going to, inspire some change if things don't go well. So, they're doubling down and, we'll see what happens. And, I think that's a good segue into, what pieces do we have to make those things happen? Because you can scheme all you want, but everybody knows in most sports, a lot of it's going to come down to your player's ability, and you're going to be limited by that. So I have a couple questions here about the offense. The first of which is, of people coming back who played last year, who do you think makes a leap?
I think that in a perfect world, it's one of the receivers, right? It's probably either Jeremiah Aaron or Cortez Braham, just because of the lack of depth in that room. I don't know. The other, and I guess this counts, but Jalen Anderson, obviously down the stretch last year, kind of broke out a little bit. We'll get into it. I think he's probably I think he plays running back at a higher level than anybody else on the roster. And so we'll see. I guess we'll see if the coaches agree. But if he does become the feature back this year, maybe or one of the two feature backs this year alongside CJ, I could see him being kind of a household name in the Big 12 because I think that he's really, 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 really good at running back.
Yeah, I think all would be great responses. I think, like you saw some flashes from Aaron and Braham at the end of the season.
Yeah,
that's a position group. We I mean, you need somebody to step up. We lost a lot of dudes there, so the receiving room that would be really warranted. I'll throw you one more name, and it'd be Jaquay Hubbard. There at the tackle position.
That would be great.
That was the one position I felt like on our line, the right tackle sort of struggled. I know Jaquay played snaps here. I mean, he played he shared the snaps. He battled some injuries, but for him to really step up and firm up that right tackle, I think that could be big for the offense as well, especially to figuring out what kind of scheme we're going to be running. Okay, so next question here is the impact newcomer. So who is not on this roster that you think could come in and make some noise this year?
So the name that I've been hearing, and this is from the same kind of secondhand stories that kind of said that Neil's definitely calling the plays this year. The name I've been hearing is Cole Taylor, the transfer from LSU, the tight end. I think the phrasing that I heard is that he's maybe the best skill player in the building, which seems like pretty high praise on one hand, but then on the other hand, I mean, we don't have a ton of established playmakers, especially at the in the pass catching positions. But I think that I'm gonna trust my sources who say he's been lighting it up since he got on campus, and I'm gonna say Cole Taylor. Obviously, this offense needs something at tight end. And we need anything at tight end, please, like anything. And so, if he's good and consistent and stays on the field, God bless Mike O'Loughlin, who was good when he was on the field, but missed more games than he's played at probably. But I think if he's good, he has a chance to make a huge impact year one.
Yeah, I think that's a great option. And, it's funny. We did hear a lot of buzz about an incoming tight end last year. So hopefully the result is different than the buzz, because I feel like we heard similar buzz last year. But the tight end position, obviously, we need somebody to step up there. For impact newcomer, I kind of had two on my list, and the first one would be Devin Carter. So this guy coming from NC State, and this guy has a lot of experience. So he had one catch in 2018. And then he had
10 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. So he had a catch in 2018. I assume that was the redshirt year because he only played one game. Actually, I don't know if that rule was I don't think that rule was even around back then yet. But nonetheless, 2019 through 2022, 4 seasons, he has had at least 25 catches. He hasn't gone over 31. So he's kind of just been stuck in that little range. But he does have 10 career touchdowns. What I'm saying is this guy has game experience at the Power 5 level. So getting that kind of experience is actually, I think, going to be important for this wide receiver room, where you have just not a lot of guys who have caught any balls, and basically nobody who's caught balls in the gold and blue. So that's one to keep an eye on. And then Rodney Gallagher, I'm not sure at what level he's going to be contributing coming in as a freshman, but a lot of buzz around his recruiting and him committing to West Virginia. So I don't know what kind of role to expect with him, but it would be really encouraging to see a little bit of that spark. I know it takes time, and especially with Prather, remember you kind of started to see it towards the end of his first year, and then the second year he took a big leap. We'll be missing that guy this year, but hopefully we can see some sort of similar trajectory.
Yeah, I think the thing that hurts him in my head, and maybe it shouldn't because this hasn't been a thing forever, but he's been playing basketball this spring in high school, right? And he's breaking records at LH, and he's a fantastic basketball player, and nobody should ever fault him for that. But he's not getting this spring, right? I think when You look at the questions about Gallagher, it's nothing related to his ability. He has incredible body control, incredible acceleration. The question about him being able to contribute right away is that he's 5'10", 5'11", and 160 pounds. And can he hold up playing against Texas, playing against Oklahoma, and so that's where I think missing the spring hurts him, is because they'd have him eating 5,000 calories and lifting twice a day, and probably getting up to 175, 180 before the season, as opposed to he's going to be trying to learn the playbook over the summer. It's going to be hard enough to do that, let alone pack on 15, 20 pounds. But the snaps are available. I mean, Jesus, like we said, we. I think it's a good shout. Like, obviously, he's one of our most highly touted recruits we've had, especially in recent memory. And the snaps are available, so he's as good of a shout as any, I think.
Yeah. We the impact newcomer is anybody on the receiving room, I feel like, because there's just not a lot of.
We're going to catch the ball.
Yeah, we have to throw it to somebody at least sometimes. So that's definitely going to be the big question. All right, so now walking through the offense, just kind of a little.
I just want to say something before we get into the depth chart. You brought up an interesting point about the buzz about Palendi and all this stuff. That maybe it's been that I've been unplugged a little bit, but even over the last week and a half, don't you feel like we're much less rah on social media than we were in the lead up to any of the other springs in Neil's time? Where it's like, dude, we've been loud as hell about, this is the fastest group we've gotten, or we're going to play more man, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And none of it has worked out. And I feel like this year they're just like shutting up, getting to work, kind of maybe trying to fly under the radar a little bit, which is a bad thing, because the reason that they're doing that is because of it not working out previously. But also it's like, okay, good, you get it. Like, just show us. None of us give a shit anymore about what you say in your press conferences, because for 4 years you've been blowing smoke and we've bought it. And now it's time to just shut up and get to work and show us.
Yeah,
I just have really appreciated that. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are two realities to that. It's behind closed doors, there's a quiet confidence, or behind closed doors, it's a shit show. And we won't find out until September or maybe October. But yeah, I have objectively been a little more plugged into basketball this last month or so, but now that you mentioned it, I do notice that it hasn't been as turned up.
It's been a little bit quiet. Yeah, it's been a little quiet.
Yeah. So that is a good observation. So now we're going to kind of do a little vibe check walking through the position groups. Just sort of how you're feeling about the group, and obviously the guys that we have in that position. So first is the quarterback room. There's definitely intrigue this year. You got Garrett Green, you have Nico Markiel, our two returners. I don't think anything is decided of who is going to be starting, if anyone is going to be a clear-cut favorite, if anyone is going to hold the starting job, coming out of week 1 or 2, whatever. My vibe check on the quarterback is I'm very excited to see. I don't know, what the floor, the ceiling is. I think one question is maybe short-term versus long-term. Is Garrett Green 5 to 10% better this year, but like Nico's ceiling is much higher? What decision-making goes into that, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Like, does the necessary best guy play? And I know that's a weird thing to say, but the nature of college football now, and the nature of college football also for the team like West Virginia, is you ride like the waves up and down. So do you start that wave up with Nico if it's there, or do you take what you can get with Green this year? That's just my assumption of how those two quarterbacks are going to be. Who knows? Green might take a massive step up in the offseason. We don't know. So what are your vibes on the quarterback room right now?
Yeah, I think I'm like that. The Leo meme from Django Unchained. Like, it's like they have my attention. Like they have my curiosity and my attention at this point. Because I think we saw last year, like Garrett down the stretch. Garrett was electric. He was a shot in the arm. Legitimately, this is not biased to say, he was one of the. I mean, he's an elite athlete at the quarterback position. He was one of the best runners in the entire country last year, despite only playing 3.5 games. Mm-hmm. And so, the short-term, long-term thing, Nico is probably the play there, right? But I think that the thing that has me excited is that if Garrett is your fallback, that's fine, because Garrett gives you, it's the same kind of deal. Like, Garrett gives you the identity, you know exactly what you are with him, and he's exciting as hell. For, as you know, as crazy as he plays sometimes, he's exciting as hell. But I think that my favorite thing about both of these guys is they both, the bring your own juice thing. Like, they both have like a little bit of an it factor. We saw even last year when Nico came in, when Garrett got hurt against Oklahoma, was it Oklahoma State, last game of the year? Like, dude came in and made plays. Like, he wasn't throwing the ball all that well yet. But like, made the plays that he needed to get us that win. And I think, zooming out even a little bit further, I'm just glad we have somebody who can run the damn ball. Like, both of these guys, Garrett's elite. Nico is above average as an athlete. And so just the fact that they have that, it puts the out of structure playmaking on the table. It puts the zone read back on the table, all that kind of stuff. As a modern college offense and trying to be a seriously good college offense, I just don't know how you can try and function without some sort of mobility at the quarterback position. So getting back to that gives me warm feelings in my tummy.
Totally agree. Though you failed to remember that the zone read has always been on the table. It's just the read part of it. It was always, we run the play. It's just the quarterback never keeps the ball. Right. Actually having the threat of keeping it does change the dynamic there. Yes. So yeah, no, I'm excited to see what shakes out. Both exciting dudes. Both like have the potential to be really electric. So
should be wide open, I think, this spring, right? I mean, should be wide open.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting race to follow. I really haven't heard anything either way. Yeah, so we'll just see, and that's something that I'm sure will evolve as the spring and summer go along. So next position group is the running back room. Obviously very productive. That's probably why Chad Scott is where he is, and returning lots of guys who put up numbers last year. How are you feeling about the running backs?
Yeah, super high. I think, now that Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson are kind of, they have moved on so obviously Texas, if you're listening to the podcast, those guys went to Texas, but it kind of vacates that crown. The throne is available for top running back room in the conference. And, the fact we bring all four guys back who played last year, all four of them played at a high level. I think two of them, I'd say all four of them were above average. And then I think Jalen Anderson and CJ both are like actually special talents at the running back position. But you bring back 350 carries, almost 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns. And then you add Jaheim White, who, high rated 3-star recruit. But I think most of the stuff that you read about him is that a lot of people thought he was underrated. He can do a lot of things, but maybe underrated because he's a little bit on the smaller side. And then DJ Oliver, another kind of like mid 3-star guy, but a big guy. I think it's a really good room. I think it's probably even better than last year when we were saying this is the deepest room we've had since Neil's been here. I think the primary concern is just like, are there enough touches for these guys, and how do you prioritize the touches? So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, are there enough touches is a good problem to have when it's like, we got enough dudes, we want to get the ball. And as we move into the receiver conversation, I think, that conversation changes. So, everything we talked about so far leans towards this is going to be an offense that is going to want to utilize the legs, quarterbacks who can run, multiple options of running backs who can run, and, returning a lot of experience at the O-line. I'm interested to see, just mainly about the running backs, how CJ really just kind of how like his body develops over the full season in the weight room, recovering from an injury. But, he was out there doing amazing stuff, game one, really. And this was a kid like fresh out of high school. So interested to see, the typical, 20 pounds of muscle they put on in the off season, how that changes his running style. I always felt like CJ didn't even have moves. He just did the little skip to the side to, miss the tackle, and no one wanted to bring him down. So if you put some weight on him, nobody's going to want to get in front of him and make a stop.
Yeah, I don't even know how much weight you need to put on. But changing the body composition, right? Where, it felt like he had a little bit of puppy fat last year. Not that he was fat, but just he very clearly hadn't been lifting weights in a college weight program for an extended period of time. And so, yeah, getting the full off season, excited to see what he turns into, man. Cause God, he was for the first 6-7 games last year. He was a rip roaring good time.
Yeah, sky's the limit, and I think also just the added durability. I mean, I think you could tell
Yeah,
as the season wore
100%.
on, he just wasn't ready for all the touches he was getting. So,
Well, guy goes from playing like tight end, H back, wide receiver a lot of the time in high school to getting 25 carries in a Power 5 football game. It takes its toll. So yeah, no, that's a great point there.
Definitely. So moving on to the offensive line, I think this unit is really good as well. Returning three really solid guys in Milam, Frazier, and Nestor. So keeping a good bit of that core. You're going to have Hubbard out on the right tackle, who got about half of the snaps last year, I believe. And then Remac's going to be your kind of newer addition at the left guard position, but he also got a decent number of snaps last year. He's going to be a sophomore, I believe. So how are you feeling about the O line this year?
Yeah, very good. Like I said, kind of in the Matt Moore section, it's a strength of the team now. So I think the vibes have to be high. I'm very confident. In the three that you mentioned, I think, Rimich, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but yeah, he started the last 3 or 4 games of the season. James Gamitter ended up leaving the team sometime after the halfway point last year, and he stepped in and didn't really miss a beat. I think he put up like a 68.9 PFF grade on 440 snaps. So I mean, that's a really solid number on a significant number of snaps. I think he does even better in year 2. So I don't think you miss a beat there with him as a new starter. And then at some point, man, it has to click for one of these tackles. Like, these guys have played 1,000+ snaps each, the last 2 seasons. It feels like it's kind of been a 50-50 split with Hubbard and
Yates.
Brandon Yates. And they've shown flashes, but it just hasn't all the way clicked for them yet. Like, at some point it has to click. So, I don't know. Yeah, I think that you look at this, you look at the running backs. Those are the strength of this team. If this offense is good, it's because the dudes up front are blocking the shit out of people, and the dudes behind them are running the shit out of the ball. So, yeah, love it.
Only slight concern, I think, would just be depth, and that's just because it's you got Yates and Malone, or maybe you're 6'7", and then you got 3 redshirt freshmen after that. So, just as injuries and as the season progresses, how deep we are. But I like the top 5, top 6. I really like that. So, yeah, hopefully this is a line that plays to the strengths of maybe, we're going to be pounding the rock a little more this year. So moving just to the end of the line, to the tight end position. I don't know what to say about our tight end position the last year. A lot of hype, and then we saw some flashes from Davis, but I think this year just kind of not sure what we're getting exactly with Davis, and then this addition in Cole Taylor, who has received a lot of off-season acclaim. I don't know if based on the style of this offense too, you want a guy, if you want a block first kind of tight end, or if we do need the help in the passing game, which is a likely possibility, what's that split of what those responsibilities are going to be? It's something I'm going to be looking forward to.
Yeah, and how often can we use both of them together, right? Like, I think, a big part of the best offenses, in terms of running the ball, are the ones who, like you said, can have that split between the tight ends who can kind of contribute both ways. If we put 12 personnel out there and we have a back and we have 2 tight ends, like, can we throw the ball out of that? You would hope we can run the ball with 2 tight ends on the field, but can we be effective passing the ball out of that? I think the important thing to note here, I put the bullet in here, is that, Traylon Davis showed flashes. Cole Taylor, like I said, my buddies have heard that he's doing really well. But the jump up from Palende after Michael Laughlin went out, like, Palende was literally graded out as the 300th worst out of 304 FBS tight ends last year who played 100+ snaps. So, going from that to even like average is going to be a noticeable difference. We were, like you said, we were gassed up. We were gaslit about, Palende, he's one of the premier blocking tight ends in the Colorado State. The guy sucked. I mean, the guy sucked. Let's be real.
PR team was good though.
Apparently, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, whoever he has running that, like, clearly we fired that guy, or else he'd be out here blowing smoke about Cole Taylor as well. But Um, yeah, I don't know. Like you said, it's hard to say. Like we probably need both of these guys to be good for the best version of this offense to kind of really come to fruition. Um, I think Traylon Davis is on a nice trajectory. You know, he kind of reminds me. Wait, he's a sophomore, right? Sorry.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, redshirt sophomore. So I feel like he's about where O'Loughlin was, where, you know, he was like a wide receiver coming out of high school who we asked to gain, like, hey, gain 50 pounds and play tight end. And he kind of did okay towards the end of the year last year. And then if Cole Taylor's good, then, you know, I think it's better than it was at the end of last year when Palende was playing.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, to be honest, is that no matter what, it's probably an upgrade.
Yeah.
Don't know how much of an, like, don't know, you know, what the ceiling of this position is, but I think we're going to be having at least somebody's going to be contributing, which is, you know, hopefully going to help this offense. Like I said, I'm interested to see what the run pass split is of the offense and then of the usage in the tight end. And yeah, if you could throw two tight ends out there and we just run the ball down your throat, like, sign me up. I'm in for that. Just go Jalen Anderson, CJ Donaldson in the backfield, two tight end set, and we're just going to run it. And you know we're going to run it, and we're still going to pick up like 5 or 6 yards. That's the offense I'm envisioning, which is a beautiful segue to the receiving room, which I love. In the notes, you put chuckles nervously, which is the I'm in danger meme right here, because I'll just give you a recap of the guys who will not be returning to the receiving room. So first we have Bryce Ford-Wheaton, 105 targets. We have Caden Prather, 82 targets. We have Sam James, 77 targets. And you got Reese Smith, 31 targets. Those guys are gone. The next guy up is Cortez Bram, 20 targets last year. You got Jeremiah Aaron, 18 targets. And then Palende with 12 targets. He's gone. The next one is CJ Donaldson with 11. So you have two, and Donaldson's obviously a running back. You have two guys on this roster who have caught more than 10, or been targeted more than 10 times in the Golden Blue. So, man, it's just, you know, we mentioned Ronnie Gallagher. We mentioned Devin Carter. You know, some guys are coming in. You got Preston Fox in there. But, you know, you're looking down this roster and you're like, there's not a lot of names that, no knock on these guys, there's just not a lot of names that you hear called on Saturday, just because all the guys who were are not here anymore.
Yeah, it's bleak. It's it's bleak out there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's why I said, you know, like if this offense is going to be anything, like one of Aaron or Braham, or, you know, God willing, both of those guys kind of have to take a big step forward this year. Just because, you know, I mean, you can run the ball, like, you can run the ball as well as you want. If there's 9 guys in the box, it's going to be really tough sledding. So we need some of these guys. I know Devin Carter, you know, you mentioned, you know, that he really hadn't had north of 30 catches, but one time, but he's a big body. He's a deep threat. You know, I think if you look at his average receptions, they were all like 17, 18 range, in terms of yards per catch over the years. So he's hopefully a guy that we can put out there and at least make defenses respect him on the outside. Yeah, Gallagher in the slot. Hopefully Aaron in the slot does some stuff. I know we brought in Jashawn Polk from or Jashawn Pokey. I don't know. You know, I guess we'll learn about that from Kent State. But he's more of a return specialist. You know, he's a guy. Maybe we get him to some touches out of the slot, but he's more of a return guy. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, you know, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, you know, if Garrett Green doesn't win the quarterback job, like, he probably needs some touches at wide receiver. And then a guy like Jaheim White, who is an outstanding receiver despite being, you know, about 5'8" or 5'9", the running back out of high school. When you look at the folks in front of him in the running back room, like, is this somewhere where he could maybe find some playing time? So I don't know. I think all options are on the table here. We're going to be looking. Whoever wants to come catch passes is going to be allowed to have a shot to catch passes, I think.
Yeah, and I love the Garrett Green call out. That is definitely something I had on my mind too, is that, you know, if Garrett Green is losing the quarterback position and losing it to a guy who is, you know, younger than he is, if that's something that's evident early, I just think he would be a fantastic slot receiver. He's got like the build for it. He's definitely got the shiftiness and the speed in open space. It'd be a kind of guy, you just hit him on the slant a few times a game. You probably cook up some bubble screens or something for him. And he's just a guy you want having the ball in his hands. And if Nico wins the starting job, I want to see Garrett Green on the field somehow, and not in like the cheesy ways we did with him and Deggy that were just like predictable and like whatever. Like I want him to be like a part of the offense in some way. So I think that could definitely, add to the explosiveness of the offense.
For sure. The guy needs, if he's not going to play quarterback, he still needs 5 to 7 touches a game. And needs 25 to 30, 20 to 30 snaps. Like he was the most explosive player on the team last year. He's somebody that defenses have to account for. You have to play this guy. You have to play this guy. He's electric with the ball in his hands. You have to play the guy, even if he's not playing at quarterback.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. All right, so that is the offensive vibe. So, like, as a whole, how do you feel about the offense? I would say, it's funny because in my head, what sticks out is we're losing all of these receivers and we're losing JT Daniels. And you'd be like, well, that's a lot of pieces, whatever. But when we really broke it down, quarterbacks, I think probably medium to high on that. Running backs should be better than last year. O-line should be as good, if not better than last year. Tight end, it can't get worse than last year. Receiving room is going to be down, but like pretty much every other group we're feeling all right about. And obviously we got a fantastic play caller, Neil Brown. So like, what could go wrong with this group?
Yeah, I think that this has been a productive exercise for me, just because like diving back into it, I feel better than I thought I would, and I'm as big of a homer as there exists, just for West Virginia football. But I feel better than I thought I would. I think losing the pieces that we lost are going to kind of force this transition to an offense that we probably should have been leaning into all along. Like it's going to be really hard to lean away from what we were, like the last 3 games of the season, kind of what we were. That's the kind of offense that I see us having success with. And just, as a coach, sometimes you need to lean into your strengths. Joel, Neil Brown, Sun Tzu Brown told us that at week 11 of year 4 last year, that, sometimes you got to play to your strengths, guys. And the strengths of this team are running quarterbacks, running backs, offensive line. And so, I think that when you look at it like that, I feel way better about it than I thought I would. If we lean into that identity, if everybody stays healthy, I think that we can be a pain in the ass to play. We can be a pain in the ass for teams to play.
Yeah, and just you said that the identity, just like having one would be cool. Just knowing that a team is going to. I don't even care if it's as much as like being predictable. It's like if you're good at it, you force a team to stop it. Like you knew WV was going to press. Like that's something you have to deal with. That some teams are going to run the triple option. Some teams are going to run 5-out spread all the game. Like just have the identity and something that you feel confident and you're going to stick with. Because a lot of these coaches are coaching for their job, at least at WVU.
Yep.
All right, so that wraps up our conversation on the offense. We are going to split into 2 episodes. So the next one coming will be the conversation with the defense. So you can find us on smokingmusket.com. You can also find us on Twitter at WVStatsGuy and at Game Day Shorts. There's also a Twitter account for the pod. It's at West by Pod with underscores in between. And as always, we appreciate you listening and hit us up.
Catch you next time.
1, 2.